Welcome to the Leadership on Virtual Wellness Strategies. This presentation will be presented by Nikita Suveje Carrera, the Mental Health and AOD Educator. It is sponsored by the Student Centers and Activity Office of Involvement.
Time management and stress reduction. My name is Nikita. I am a health educator from H.O.P.E, which is just a short acronym for Health Outreach Promotion and Education, and we are part of Rutgers Student Health. And so we put together this presentation on looking at this interesting space that we're in right now with finals possibly going on and planning for the holidays and the election and all kinds of craziness going on with that. We were finding that a lot of folks are in this space where they're just either feeling strapped for time and they really don't know how to kind of juggle it all. And along with the piece where they're strapped for time, it's becoming a stressful situation, whether it's, my parents want me to come home for the holidays and I don't feel comfortable, or I don't want to, take anything home to them. I don't want to bring anything back to campus, or, I'm so stressed out because I am home and I can't study, those kinds of things. And so we wanted to just kind of provide some tips and strategies that we have found that have been best practices when we have done our in-person sessions. As we are talking about these strategies, feel free to either unmute yourself, we are a small enough group, or you can just type right into the chat box. If you feel more comfortable, type in your question directly to me. What you would just do is switch over from the space that says to everyone, and you would direct your question specifically to me. And I can answer any of those questions as anonymous as possible in this small group that we have here. But then we also have some questions that other students have asked that I'll kind of just be popping in to provide in terms of information. And then we'll save space at the end to answer any other questions that we haven't had, really just talk about some of the strategies and we have there. So what I like to do is start off this activity with a small kind of mini activity that's just going to be focusing on your eyes. So what I want you to do is just either turn your laptop so that you can see the full screen. If you're using your phone to view the presentation, turn it on its landscape view so that you can see kind of a full view of the screen. And we're going to do just a quick activity in looking at these two numbers that we have here. So as you can see, hopefully you can see the number 1 and the number 2 on your screen with a red line straight down the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call out one of the numbers. And what I want you to do is just direct your eyes to either the number that I tell you. And that's all you're going to do. It's a very simple activity. And then we're going to kind of open the chat box to see how this activity felt for folks. And the interesting thing about this activity is that we do it in both of our sessions around time management and around stress reduction. And generally, this helps give us a sense of where people are at in terms of their stress levels and also in terms of their ability to relax and kind of take things in terms of time as well. So that's kind of how we kind of just take the pulse of the activity and our group. So again, I'm just going to call out a number, direct your eyes to whichever number I say, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Number 1. 1. 2. 1. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. 1. 1. 2. 2. 2. 1. 2. 1. 2. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. And that's it for that. All right, so I'm going to open my chat box. So what I would like folks to just either type in or open your mic and speak right into the group if you're fine with that. How did you feel doing this small activity? What were some of the things that were going on in your body or any feelings that you may have had while doing that very short activity?
I felt very calm. I wasn't expecting to.
Okay, so a sense of calm, though you weren't expecting to feel that way. Okay, any others?
I think I was, oh my God, I think I was a little opposite. I kind of felt like I had my teeth clenched because I was trying to focus on not missing what you were saying.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So there you go, right there. That's usually the case that we get. And sometimes it really does come down to where, where we are when we're doing the presentation. And also when we're asked to do the presentation, if we are doing a stress relief presentation solely, people usually say, I found myself that I stopped breathing. And so that might be in that same case that you're talking about, that your teeth are clenched and you're like, all right, well, I'm really tense because I'm trying to focus on this thing. I've got one task and I want to get it done right. And so, all right, 1, 2, 1, 2, I can do that. And then others feel like, well, you're not really asking me to do much, but look at some numbers. I can do that. Okay, it's taking me out from all the stress of the other stuff that I might have going on during the day. I can look at some numbers, easy peasy. So thank you for that. And what we really do stress in this space is that what we do want is to kind of bring ourselves into this space, whether it's you're coming to it and you're like, all right, I'm really relaxed and I can take this information in and I'm good. Or you're in the other space where you're like, all right, I'm kind of a little bit stressed out right now. What I want you to be able to do is find a space where you can kind of enter into this very brief presentation, because we are going to be talking about that sense of relieving stress and being able to kind of juggle a number of things that are going on with our time. And so this is one of those things that we can kind of ease ourselves into that space in terms of some of that work. So when we talk about stress as a whole, what would you say stress is? If you could, again, just either unmute yourself or type into the chat box. When I say stress, what's the first thing that pops to your mind?
I think about being overwhelmed or procrastinating or something like that.
Feeling overwhelmed or procrastinating, you said? Okay. And anyone else? Stress. Right, it's like this the sense of having lots of things to do. Absolutely, yeah. And so it's the thing that we always talk about, or stress with stress, is that stress can be a good thing, in our lives. It's our body's way of responding to the stimulus that's going on around us, whether it's external or internal. It's the atmosphere that we find ourselves in on a daily basis, whether it's going to the store, going to class, those kinds of things, or the internal things that are happening with us, whether it's, there may be, some internal stress where you're feeling you're not managing your time properly. Maybe there's some relationship stuff going on. There might be family things going on. All of those things can be either internal or external in that space. But the thing is that stress is good for you. It's okay to have certain levels of stress because it helps our body learn how to regulate in that space. But the thing is, when your stress levels become high, that's when we are looking at those negative physical and emotional consequences. And when we're talking about stress, we aren't really talking about that high level of stress that what we generally might see someone dealing with anxiety. And from there, anyone who might have to necessarily take medication to help reduce their anxiety and those kinds of things. What we are really looking at is kind of this low level of stress that's kind of a mix in our day-to-day lives. And so when we talk about stress or the cause of stress, we generally say it can come from lots of different spaces. And some bits of stress can come at us as tiny little droplets. And I always use the analogy of the stress bucket and talking about what fills your bucket. Now, these could be tiny little drop of water. If you think about tiny little drop, the faucet that, is kind of has a little leak to it. And you get a tiny drip, a tiny drip, a tiny drip. And then you might have a situation where maybe you put the faucet up just a little bit higher and it's got a little stream going, but it's not filling that bucket really fast. But there's something that's on almost as a constant, but it's not necessarily overwhelming. And then you have the case where you open that faucet up full on and it will fill that bucket up really, really fast. And so when we take that and we look at what might those tiny drips be, as opposed to that steady stream, as opposed on the other end, that full blast, what can those things be? And generally we ask folks, the question of what causes you stress or what's filling your stress bucket, these are the things that they talk about. Relationships, school, friends, my finances, conflict in general, whether it's, right now we can say maybe political conflict or conflict with amongst friends or family members, any of those things, illness and legal issues. These come up as the top responses to what is causing us stress at the moment. And again, it could be, let's say if it's the tiny drip, let's say, you haven't talked to your friend in a while, and that's the person who usually is the person to help you with stress. And maybe there was a conflict and you two aren't talking this week, but it'll kind of smooth itself out in a couple of days. Then you might have the steady stream that comes in, and it's school. For our folks, school is that steady stream. It's like the constant classes and the homework and not feeling like you're keeping up on top of all of those things. And then maybe the full blast on could be, your financial situation or work-related issues. And then for some folks, it's one-time deal. They have an issue with their friend this week or this month, no other things going on. But for other folks, it's all of it. It's, yes, I'm having a relationship issue and school is just the steady thing on top of it. And now I'm also sick. So now how do we, work in that space? Outside of that, we say that this is also the stuff that's taking up most of our time. When we talk about where's our time go, not just in terms of our physical time of having to be somewhere, but our emotional time of where we're spending a lot of our time distressing or even thinking about these issues. We know we have to go to school, and there's certain days of the week and times that we have to physically be in our Zoom classrooms or any other variation that we have of that. But then, you're sitting in your class and you're getting text messages from your friends or a family member, and there's another issue going on. And so now you're trying to kind of navigate two spaces at once, or you're worried about, your work schedule or if you're still going to be employed, those kinds of things. And so these same issues that are taking up or increasing our stress levels are also taking up a lot of our time, both our physical time and being able to be, in multiple places, and our emotional time of where our brain space is going as well. So when we talk about this space of where's our time go, we know that there's not that many hours of the day. We have very few hours. Hopefully some of those hours are used with sleep and eating and connecting with our friends. But outside of that, we know that we are still doing lots of different things. A lot of us are multitasking those things. We are going to meetings, and we're, going to meetings for class and work sometimes, and then, someone's birthday and it's all online, or we're traveling for work, or we're just playing video games. Even the stuff that has become creative has now all gone into this virtual space. I've known a lot of folks who are taking to doing art projects online, and they're buying the, like painting stuff, and you can watch a video and paint at home. And so it's something fun, but it's all in this virtual space. And so we're sitting a lot and maybe not necessarily getting a lot of exercise. But for some of our folks, we're also spending a lot more time with our friends and family members. And then for others, we're spending a lot more time watching the news than we have ever before. And it really is that space of talking about where our time goes in any one of these spaces. Now, TikTok has become one of those interesting things that I have found, that I don't have the app, but I'm seeing all these videos pop up from other places. I guess you can stream a TikTok video from other places, but I'm like, I am learning things on TikTok, and I feel like I'm really accomplishing things that I have never seen before. I saw someone split a banana down the middle, and I was like, wait, a banana has 3 parts? My mind was just like, boom, like I feel like I learned something new in like 10 seconds. And I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that same thing, but there's lots of different websites that I've never went on to before. We talked a little bit about journaling in one of the sessions that I went to, and how there's electronic journals, what I never knew about. And so this space of experiencing new things and experiencing them differently is really kind of eye-opening for folks. And then there's some other spaces that we're just like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to read another book. I don't want to, stream another movie. And so some of us are, what do they call, zoomed out. And then a lot of spaces are fatigued in any of these spaces, because we just don't want to do it anymore. And I don't want to read another book, and I don't want to do any more yoga and that kind of stuff. But it is that thing of finding the space and time that works. And those are the tips that we have in terms of some of the strategies that people have been using in that space. So when we talk about our time, again, we don't have that much in the day, but really we break it down looking at the space and where our time goes throughout the day. And we're going to come back to this time pie, but what I want you to do is have a mental image of it in your head. And when you think about some of these strategies that can help with time management and stress reduction, also think about where it might fit in your day. And that will be helpful so that it doesn't feel like you're adding more things to your list of already the full list that you might have going there. So the space of managing it all. Our tip number one is actually using a planner. Now, for some folks, having a paper planner is kind of old school. And for others, it's a way that helps solidify their day in their head. And I am one of those folks who has paper planner and a digital planner as the backup. For me, writing down my activities in the space of, I think I have mine actually right behind me, in the space of actually putting it in, whether it's when you block it out, as in the space of filling in the dates, or when you're actually going in and using the planner piece on the tail end, where you can actually maybe put some of your notes in, might be helpful. And also, what I found, and this is just something that I took even from when I was in school, is that me writing my notes down as opposed to either recording them or just digitally typing them actually helps me remember them. So I'll have my calendar that I have in my phone for my phone's notification, but then I also have my calendar through my email at work and the paper calendar. So I have 3 calendars that I use to try to keep me on track in some way, space, or form. But the thing is, I actually find time during the week to sit down and put them all together so that they don't start to forget in spaces. And so I sit down with all 3 calendars at one time, and I block out about 15 minutes to do that and make sure if I'm putting anything in my work calendar that it goes in both calendars, because I don't have my work email on my phone, which we were talking about just before folks got onto this call. Because for me, my work email becomes distracting. And so I need to kind of separate. So my work email and notifications don't pop up on my phone. I actually sit down and find time to go in and check my email because I just need that separation, especially now with everything being in my space. You're all sitting in my dining room right now. I do feel like I need that separation. So I keep all of that stuff off my phone. And I know that I can go into it to be able to find it. Our second tip is using text smarter. So this goes along with that same space of using your phone. If you're going to be using it as a calendar, making sure you're setting up notifications. A lot of phones now have the reminders that you can put in. I know for anyone who has a fancy phone out there, you can just say, hey, Siri, or mine is Google. I was like, hey, Google, set up a reminder for me on this date and time, and Google will remind me very nicely in my new Idris Elba voice that I have something to do on that day and time. And the other thing that I found with being able to use text smarter is not only with the notifications, but the alerts and alarms on your phone can be useful if you give yourself some time to set those up. So if you are, let's say, someone who has lots of kind of moving pieces in your life, maybe you have a work schedule and maybe you're assisting at home and you're making dinner and, possibly lunches and things like that, and you're helping in any other way, setting a notification or an alert on your phone might be helpful. Now, what I do for my Text Smarter use is that I set up a 10-minute buffer for anything. So if I know that I need to start a Zoom call at 3:00, which is today, I'll set myself a reminder for 10 minutes before that'll say, hey, my alarm is going off and it's 2:50, so I know I need to at least get myself mentally prepared, sit down, open up my laptop, look presentable, those kinds of things, to be able to come into the space in a really functional way. other things that we can do both in terms of stress reduction and time management when we're talking about tech, there are lots of different apps out there that can help us with stress reduction. Now, I came across one last night. I don't even know how I got onto this app. It was somewhere in the throes of Hallmark Channel app downloading that I found a YouTube channel. I can remember the name of it. It's called Calm Calmed by Nature. And so the Calmed by Nature, I can show you it's probably going to have a glare, but it has a little owl's face, and the owl's face is in blue. And what it actually has is ambient sounds. It has a mix of ambient sounds. So the one I actually downloaded yesterday was Rainy Night in a Coffee Shop, because I actually do miss being able to go out and get coffee somewhere, and you hear kind of like chatter in the background, and you hear people mixing their drinks and things like that. And you might hear some music in the background playing softly. And that's the space where I would sometimes go when I had time to sit and not be in my house and read a book. And so I can very easily put that on my phone and pretend like I'm in the coffee shop. And it can actually help with the space of feeling like I'm in a new space, feeling a little bit of that change in atmosphere, but also getting some of that ambient sound and relaxing space into that as well. There are lots of apps out there that are in that same vein in terms of things like what's the other? I think the other one is just called Calm. It's an app you can download. It has spaces where you can have someone read to you in lovely, soothing voices, bedtime stories, or even if it's just a quick short story. For some folks, being able to just take a few minutes to sit and listen to someone else kind of do the thing and read the book to you might be helping in terms of stress reduction. And so that's one of the few apps that's out there. Sleep is another app, and I don't know if the Sleep app is an app you have to pay for off the top of my head. But Sleep is an app that has the same thing in terms of soothing sounds, fireplace, rain sound, someone reading you a story, those kinds of things. But if you're someone who feels like you're more in the space of needing to manage your time more, there are also apps that can tell you when you have used more social media time than you may have needed to or wanted to. And so you can set up alerts that the app says, okay, hey, you've been on Instagram for an hour now, you have other things to do, it's time to shut it off. But then it also gives you the kind of autonomy to say, well, I want to continue down this rabbit hole of social media that I already found myself in, so I'm going to keep going. And so you can ignore the notification and keep using it. But just know that the apps that are there, when you use them and you set them up properly, they can be beneficial. And if you're not someone who wants to use a lot of apps, there are lots of free things that are on phones. I'm a Droid person. We were having this whole conversation about cell phones right before folks got on. But I know even with the Droid, finding those notifications, using your timers and alerts and alarms on your phone is really, really simple. And it's not something that you have to do in terms of downloading anything additional and any of that stuff there as well. So our next tip in terms of this time management and also looking at stress reduction is finding time to prioritize the things that are really important to you. Now, when we talk about time management and stress reduction, we use this thing called Covey's grid. Now, Covey's time grid is looking at kind of like your basic to-do list. So if you know you have a running list of, let's say, 20 things that needs to get done, this time grid can help you prioritize in that space of what really needs to be urgently done, and then the other stuff that you can kind of move to another date and time so that you're not feeling stressed out, you're not feeling overwhelmed in terms of all the things that you have to do. So what we generally say is take your to-do list and start to prioritize it. So our first quadrant, when we're talking about the grid, is their quadrant 1 stuff that's important and urgent. It needs to get done ASAP. And so that could be that you have an exam that you need to study for, a paper that's due, tonight or tomorrow, a cell phone bill that needs to get paid and don't forget it. Or, you don't want to be late for class, or there's a situation that is family related. Those are things that are all important and urgent. They need your time, as opposed to the stuff that falls into the second quadrant, which is it's important, but it's not urgent. These are the things that sometimes people find that takes up all their time because they're like, it's really important to me. And it could be like, I'm planning for my future and I have these personal growth things that I really, really want to focus on. And I've got an exam next week and I really want to make sure I do well on it. Or, everybody keeps telling me I need to take better care of myself and practice self-care. So I'm going to do that right now. Even though I have a paper due tonight, I'm going to take a bath, those kinds of things. And so, yes, your stuff that falls into this category, it is important, but it's not urgent. And so the stuff that falls into the future goals and kind of self-actualization and your personal growth, what we generally say is take notice of those things, but it doesn't need to get done right away. So let's say, and I think I use this because I'm horrible at it. For me, I feel like I can't necessarily focus if my space is cluttered. So sometimes I find that I will spend an hour when I was in my office, I would actually start cleaning my office. And so I would be out there with the wipes and I'm dusting things off. And next thing you know, it's an hour later and I really didn't focus on, putting that project together that I said I was going to. But for me, I couldn't focus on the project because my desk was a mess. And I find that's the same situation at home. I'm sitting at the desk, at my dining room table, and then I'm looking at the kitchen and it's dirty. And I'm like, oh, I know I really want to get in there and clean that kitchen, but I need to focus. So what we say is, find time to do that thing in terms of the cleaning, but make sure that you're not taking the time away from the stuff that is in that quadrant 1. So if you know that you have an exam tomorrow or paper due, go find another place that you're not looking at the mess around. You might need to just take your laptop outside, or go somewhere to some of the places that are open. I just found out today that CAPS actually has meeting rooms that folks can use. If you're finding that you just need quiet space and you don't have that space at home, you can go to the counseling center if you're anywhere near or close to campus or able to go to campus, and just finding a little room to sit in, as opposed to looking at the mess that's in your house, possibly like me. Outside of that, we have the third category, which is the stuff that's not important, but then it's urgent. It's the things that interrupt your middle of your day. You get a phone call even though you're trying to study, and right now your attention is distracted and taken to that space. Or you're just finding, peer pressure, your friends want to go out and, they're like, oh, you can study later, that kind of stuff. But it's urgent because they're kind of just knocking at your door or calling you on the phone, that kind of thing, interrupting your day. Then the last category is the quadrant 4 stuff. This is the stuff that we are very easily can fall down that rabbit hole of, oh, I'm just going to watch this one thing on Netflix. The next thing you know, you're 3 episodes in. Same thing I did last night. I said, I'm going to watch this one episode of Hallmark Christmas. Next thing I knew, it was 3 movies in. It was 12 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but it just went away somewhere. But that's the stuff that happens and that just completely takes your time. So what we say with these 4 categories, you want to be able to manage your time in this quadrant 1, focus on the quadrant 2 stuff, knowing that, yes, we're not saying that you shouldn't focus on self-care, you shouldn't focus on, your future goals, but it's not necessarily pressing at the time. Then you want to use caution with any of the stuff that falls into this category of 3, of the interruptions and unimportant phone calls and the, doing something to make someone else happy, that kind of stuff. And then try really, really hard to avoid the category 4 stuff. The social media black hole, the video games, or the busy work that kind of just will take up your time. And you really look back and you're like, I don't know where an hour of my time just disappeared to. So that's the case that you have there. Oh, and thank you for the study room. So yeah, so the Student Center has available study rooms as well. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so that is our next tip. And we'll talk a little about this. As I said, we're going to come back to this time pie. So this is another one of the tips that we have in terms of taking our time. What you want to do is make sure you're blocking out good chunks of time for sleep. All right, so that's our number 1, sleep, and we're going to come back to this specifically. But you want to then say, all right, well, with the rest of the day, how does my day look? And so really try to block out or think about, realistically, where does your time go? And then where can you kind of move things around? Try not to mess around too much with the sleep stuff, but generally you want to find that you're getting a good amount of sleep. We generally say about 7 hours is a good chunk of time. Then for some folks, maybe you're spending the time from when you wake up to the afternoon, you're in class, you're studying, you're doing work. You want to find time to eat. That's a good lunch right around this space. Depending on what your schedule is, maybe it's a little bit later in the day. I know some folks don't necessarily are breakfast people and they might be eating their first meal later in the day around 1 o'clock. What we generally say is that, but find time when you're sitting down to eat, that's all you're doing. And that gives you time to really relax in that space, that your body is recognizing that it's actually eating, as opposed to, being on social media or TV and eating, because it's just setting up bad habits in that space. Our nutritionist, Chris Gunning, will tell you a whole lot of stuff about eating when you're distracted. But we generally say if you're going to eat, really just find time to just be eating and doing nothing else if you can. And then we might have, a couple more classes if you're taking classes at night. And then again, finding that time for dinner is that really important space there. Oh, sorry, I went on too far. But it is really that space of mapping out your time, because then you can say, all right, well, if I know that on a continuous basis that for 3 hours I sit and I watch TV and I do nothing else, maybe we can reduce that to maybe 1 hour. That's watching 2 shows as opposed to 6. Or finding other time where we can kind of give ourselves a little bit more time in sleep. So if you know that you've spent 3 hours close to bedtime watching TV, instead of really giving yourself some time to sleep, we can make adjustments in that space. Okay. Our next tip, number 4, is that it's okay to say no. So people pleasing fell into our category 3 of the things that were not important, but become urgent because you do the thing because someone says, hey, can we go out? Or, hey, can we do this? Or, hey, can you do this for me? And it is okay to say, thank you, but I can't. Thanks for inviting me, but I just can't make it because I do have all these other things that are going on right now that are priority to grabbing coffee with you right now. Or you could say, hey, well, I'm really busy right now. Can we go in about an hour? And so that gives you that flexibility to be able to look at your calendar or look at your, schedule of things that you need to get done throughout the day and say, yes, you are so important to me as my lovely friend, but I can't do it right this moment, but give me an hour so I can at least get an hour of work done, or I can get an hour of cleaning done, or an hour, whatever it is that is falling in that category 1 stuff. And then you can cut to the category 3 space of trying to, continue that relationship or whatever the case might be there. And I think for a lot of folks, it is hard to say no sometimes because we feel like we have to do something for someone, or we feel like we should. It gets really ugly when you start to do the shoulding of yourself. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. If it doesn't fall into the category that's something that is priority to you, put it to a later time or put it to a later date. And that can really help with not only your stress levels, but your time management as well. Our next category is looking at some of more of the stress reduction stuff. Tip number 5 is finding ways to relax and rest. Different from our tip number 6, which is really going to talk about self-care. But with our tip 5, could be taking a nap. Naps are good, especially if you know that you're not getting really good sleep at night. But taking a nap in the middle of the day is okay. And a nap is a short period of time. We would say about an hour, 45 minutes. 2 hours, 3 hours is not necessarily a good nap because it actually can mess up your sleep patterns, but finding ways that will help you rest and relax. For some people, that is meditation, it is yoga, those kinds of things, because you're relaxing both your mind and your body. The Rutgers Student Health website, if you go to health.rutgers.edu and you click over to the counseling tab, we actually have guided meditation on the website, both video clips and audio clips. And so if you're someone who is interested in doing kind of a mindfulness meditation or mindful walking, you can upload the website right onto your cell phone, pop in your earphones, go for a walk, and enjoy nature. The leaves and everything outside are changing. The weather is so nice. I think it was 72 degrees today, which is baffling to me for November, but whatever, I'll take it. But finding that space where maybe you're just giving yourself a few minutes to get outside, get some fresh air, can be relaxing for folks. And for other folks, that is doing other things that might fall into the category more of self-care. And that's the interesting thing with things like yoga and meditation. They fall into self-care. For some folks, self-care is just doing things like taking a bath or, giving yourself a facial or painting your nails. Any of that stuff can be in that area of self-care also. But the thing is, it's finding the time for it. And so if you go back to your 24-hour pie of the day, if you say, hey, well, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to, take a hot bath or hot shower, and then I'm going to, maybe put some really great lotion on my body, and I'm just going to sit and do nothing for an hour. That is your time. And so the thing is, when we have this long to-do list of stuff, if none of it feels good to us, then it's just kind of like you feel like like you're on that hamster wheel and you're just kind of doing things for other people and you're not really taking time for yourself. And so that's when a lot of the stress becomes this situation where folks are like, I don't feel like I'm handling it really well because I'm not doing anything for me. I'm not doing anything that feels good for me. And so taking maybe even 45 minutes, half hour to just sit and maybe do some yoga or, listen to music that really feels good to you, those kinds of things can help in that space of making it feel like it's less of a burden when you're looking at your to-do list as a whole. Our next tip, we talked a little about this already, is with sleep. Now with sleep, what you're really trying to get at is the restorative sleep. Our sleep cycles are different from person to person. We generally are looking at the pace where you want to get about 7 hours of good sleep. And your body moves into these interesting sleep cycles. Now, for some of us, if we're light sleepers, your body might have difficulty going from stage 1 sleep into that stage 2, stage 3 area. What we really want to do is set up the most optimal space that our body is able to get into REM sleep. And REM sleep is where we get our restorative sleep, where our body, when we wake up, we feel like we actually got a good 7 hours of sleep. Our body feels like it is, well rested, as opposed to someone functioning on, 5 hours of sleep. And I generally say, if you are someone who says, well, I can function on 5 hours, I don't need more, try to give yourself 6 and see how your body feels differently. And then from 6, give yourself 7. And again, see how your body feels in terms of it being different. If you don't feel like there's any benefit to getting an extra hour of sleep, then, I will just say, okay. Then I'll just say everybody's body is different. But I always say that there's no harm in giving yourself more sleep to see how your body feels after that. And then there's lots of things that we can do in terms of even getting better sleep. For some of us, it might be opening the window at night so we can get a cooler breeze so the temperature is not too hot or too cold. It might be with sleeping in layers, in terms of maybe sleeping with something thinner on your body and heavier blankets so that you can pull those layers back over the night so that you're helping your body regulate. We mentioned a couple of the apps in terms of sleep sounds. For me, I can't sleep when it's really quiet because then I start to hear everything around me. I hear the neighbor's dog barking. I hear the cars driving by. And so what I do is I turn on the rain sound or white noise, and that kind of helps drown out everything else. And that helps me sleep. But there are lots of other things that you can do in terms of getting better sleep. We have a whole presentation on sleep by itself. If you're interested, you can pop over to the health.rutgers.edu website and take a look at any of the workshops that we have there in terms of the sleep presentation. Now, lastly, we're getting to the end in terms of our tips. Putting some joy into your everyday is our tip number 8. Now, this does definitely fall into the self-care stuff, but I say it's different because for me, I would say taking a bath is more relaxing as opposed to I'm going to turn on something that makes me laugh, because we all need a little laughter in our lives right now. And I would say find a comedy, even if it's just, I downloaded, or I should say I added Pandora. I love Pandora. Pandora has a comedy station that it is just clips of funny stuff. and like the best clips of maybe someone's comedy bit that they took the hour special and they took one little clip out of it, and they stream these back to back. And so if I'm just looking for a quick laugh, I know I can move from my Pandora easy listening station to my comedy station and listen for a few minutes to get a laugh. Or if you know that there's a comedy special on TV that you love, just kind of tune into it and watch it for a little bit. We're not saying do a deep dive into a full day of comedy, but find something that brings you joy. It could be, playing a musical instrument if you're musically inclined. It could just be petting your family pet, anything and in that space. Or going outside and taking stock in nature. My son and I the other day went outside. And so my son is 11, full disclosure here. I have an 11-year-old son who at this point is just kind of like, I don't really like to do things with you anymore. And I was like, all right, whatever. So we go to the park and we're taking a walk. And I said, I'm going to give you a challenge. Let's see who can find the nicest leaves. And he went all in. And so we now have a whole table, and we're going to find something to do with this table full of leaves. But I have like this table full of these pretty leaves that he found outside. And what I loved about it is that it became not only a competition of who could find the most leaves so we could use this project, but then it was like, oh, Mom, hey, look at this. This one's really pretty. And so it was kind of like that connection back to nature. And I was like, gotcha. And so for me, that was the joy of my day yesterday, that we got outside and, we enjoyed some of the sunshine, but then we also found an opportunity to kind of connect in that space of doing something fun and nature related. And I tricked him into enjoying something with me again. So there you go. So we are right at the end of our presentation. I want to make sure I leave time to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available, both in this virtual space and in terms of when we are back on campus. So going back to the one that Karen put into the resource, so the Student Center has rooms available for study space. The Counseling Center is also doing a similar kind of drop-in thing. If you need quiet space to be able to come on campus, you do have to have a pass and do the things in terms of COVID safety, in terms of being able to go back on campus. But the Counseling Center, the Student Centers, the recreation centers, they're all offering virtual spaces for things like exercise, for things like connecting with friends, connecting with community. If you go to the Get Involved website, it's another great space if you're looking for lots of other meetings and community events that are happening virtually. You can find that on the website. It has a full list of all the events going on. The Counseling Center is doing drop-in hours if you feel like you just kind of need to sit and talk with someone about your stress levels beyond, being able to sit and do yoga or meditation, those kinds of things. And folks, they may have tried those spaces, but it's not necessarily working for them. And so they do need a little bit more in terms of being able to practice, incorporate different practices. And the Counseling Center is one of those great spaces that you can use and utilize the services there. When we are on campus and able to go back to the campus, actually going into the recreation center, the rec center is open. It's just finding the times that they're open right now. But when they're full open back to the full functioning, going to the gym, for some folks, they find that being able to exercise helps with their stress relief. The hidden gems that are all around campus, I always say, there are lots of different spaces on campus that can help. And some of them I find is these quiet spaces, as opposed to things that people sometimes just don't know that are on campus. We do have the wellness center where you can actually get a massage on campus that some folks don't know about. There are hidden places on campus like Rutgers Gardens. If you're just looking for somewhere to sit and kind of take a nap, that you can go and read a book or have, safely distanced meeting with a friend. There is this lovely little pond across the street from the train station. Technically, it's on Johnson & Johnson's property, but if you go where Albany, the corner of Albany and George connect, If you kind of go up onto that space there's a pond that's hidden inside of this space. And you're not, trespassing or anything like that. But it's just a tiny little pond. Usually it's where the J&J folks go to have lunch, but it's a small space right outside. Passion Puddle, yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a lovely, lovely place. During the spring, I believe they actually have the fountain on in the middle. So thank you for that. But there's also, and this is when all of the gyms reopen, Douglas Recreation Center. A lot of folks do not know this, especially if you're not close to Douglas campus. Douglas Recreation Center has a sauna and a steam room inside their recreation center. And so when that reopens, that is also another place that you can use to kind of use some of the facilities there. Are any of there other hidden places that folks know of, or a space that you have found is kind of like your secret space that you like to go and have quiet? And you can type those into the chat box or open up the your mic and just say them into the space. That's fine as well. We also want to leave the space open if there are any questions around any of the tips that I gave, or other resources that folks either want to suggest as well.
Thank you for attending the Leadership on the virtual wellness strategies. We hope to see you at future Leadershops. Please check your officer listserv for more information about upcoming workshops. Have a great semester.